What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's going on with NIO, Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar thus far, what's going on with tomorrow, as we have some very important data coming out that's going to affect the markets, and how things are looking as time progresses. But before I break into devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's happening with the markets. Looking at NEO right over here, you guys can see I have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. We're up 2.53% for the day, holding up quite nicely. But the question is, will NEO see more upside tomorrow, or is NEO about to get a rug pull? This is going to depend heavily on CPI and how the market ends up moving for tomorrow. So I want to break that down in more detail and break down what's happening with CPI. So CPI comes out tomorrow, an hour before the market opens. I'll be talking about this as well tomorrow. Month over month, we're expecting core CPI to be 0.3%, the same as last time. But year over year, we're expecting 3.7%. We could be looking at these numbers being adjusted because of how they changed the measure during this time last year. So that's why we're expecting 3.7% CPI on the core side, below what we saw last time. And then for all items, month over month, we want a 0.2% CPI. And for CPI year over year, we want this to be around 2.9 to 3.1%. That's between where the forecast and consensus happen to be, around 3% overall. So we'll be watching to see if we get numbers like this. They're going to be very important for the Fed's policies. Now, when we look at the latest piece of data for CPI, the purple line right here is all items except food and energy, aka core CPI. So we have core CPI right here on a very, very nice downtrend. We're going to be watching to see if this continues or if we see any changes. For CPI for all items, we're seeing a slight increase in December relative to what we saw in November. So we're hoping to see if there are any changes to that as well. So I'll be watching that very carefully. On top of this, I just want to mention that when it comes to the way the market's moving, for the month of March, there's a very, very high probability that the Fed is going to essentially keep rates the same, not really change anything. So this could be affected by CPI. So we'll be watching to see if there are any adjustments right over here. Now, on top of this, I just want to call out that for earnings tomorrow, we don't really have too many earnings that are that big coming out today. I'm not really seeing anything too crazy. We had Monday.com in the morning. It actually did relatively well in terms of EPS and revenue, but their outlook for revenue is not that strong. We saw Monday.com fall. So since then, everything else is just fine. But for Tuesday, which is tomorrow, we have Shopify in the morning and Coke all coming out in the morning. Not to mention, after close, we have Airbnb, Upstart, Robinhood, and just a couple of others. So we'll be watching those very carefully. Now, as far as NEO goes, I didn't see anything new on their Twitter page. We do have the Lunar New Year weekend that's been going on, and Chinese New Year, at least in particular. That's very important, and that's very, very great for the people out there. On top of this, you can see NEO is getting a lot of bad news. The NEO stock forecast is essentially saying that investors need to drive far, far, far away from this EV. I find that to be very, very funny. These analysts are saying that NEO could drop another 40%. There's more trouble looming. Their numbers are not looking that good. Their decline in deliveries is just not good. And they're saying that Tesla's decline in deliveries and gross margins in 2024 is bad. It's a bad sign for NEO about the whole market. They can say whatever they want, but I want to be honest that I think the long-term future of this company is going to be fine. For the short term, I do agree with them to some extent that there is some uncertainty, and we're not 100% sure about when NEO is going to be profitable. I can actually agree with some of the points that they're making, but not exactly everything. I don't think that this means that we all have to just run away from NEO and give up on the company. I think that this just means that we should be patient and wait for more of those opportunities. So I'm still a big bull on NEO. I'm still very bullish long term, but it's going to take quite a bit of time for us to see the growth that we're looking for and more of the improvements that we want to basically see. Now, despite the fact that NEO is in a very, very critical state in terms of their margins, and it's going to take some time for us to see how things progress for them, I do want to note that just like Tesla and just like all these other companies, the EV sector is a very, very slow sector in a way where it takes a long time for companies to get profitability. I think that it's no surprise for the sector. So we can't just say it's NEO that's bad, NEO is this and that. the entire sector is going through these disruptions because of the current macroeconomic factors. That's very important to note. Volume was about 44 million, below average, but we still managed to push on it. And the short volume is dropping to about, relative to price, 48%. Everything else is essentially the same in terms of like analyst ratings and such. Deutsche Bank did give NIO a buy rating a few months ago, but besides that, just nothing else. The price price ratio is dropping right, it's bouncing right here because we're seeing some buyers stepping in. Besides that, we do have a tendency of being green more often on Tuesdays, but this will also depend on how the CPI numbers look. So if CPI is around 3% or lower, it's going to be bullish. If it's above 3%, that's going to be a bit more on the bearish side. How could this pan out? Bearish CPI numbers could cause NIO to retrace to 5.9 or even 5.72, which is where we had the previous support. Bullish CPI numbers, and we're going to be looking for NIO to break above 6.2 again and eventually try to break this high and get closer to 6.5. We'll be watching to see tomorrow. It all depends on CPI. For SPY, if we're bearish tomorrow, SPY is going to come down to 498, if not even lower than that, and start sinking. If we lose 498, this thing can start sinking back down towards this imbalance at 496. If we're bullish, you want to see this thing essentially bounce and start pushing back up towards 503.5. If we break that, 505 is coming. It's going to depend on CPI, so we'll just have to wait and see. The chart is showing some weakness, but once again, it doesn't fully matter. It depends more on CPI. For Tesla, we're looking a little bit weak right now on the 4-hour time frame for a potential retracement, but technicals are not everything. If we're bullish tomorrow after CPI, we want to see it break above the 50 EMA, get above that 190 resistance, and this thing can start pushing. If we fail to do so, 186 is coming. So I'll just be open-minded just to be safe. On top of this, Apple's looking a little bit weaker. We're currently around 186.8. If we're bearish off this head and shoulders drop, a bigger drop is coming to 185 at least. If we're bullish, you want to see it bounce and start pushing for 190. The best thing to do is just be very patient and see. If we break 190, we turn back to bullish. If we lose 186, we turn bearish. And right now, we're looking a little bit more in favor of the bears, technically speaking. But this will also depend on CPI. If we get a good CPI, the QQQ could rebound towards 438 and eventually 440. If you get a bad one, we have to watch 433.9 or 434, around that range, basically. Excuse me, guys, I apologize. If we lose that, we could be sinking for 430 again before we try to bounce. So watch that carefully. Nvda is looking a little bit weaker. If we lose 715, watch 708 as support at the 20 EMA. If we lose that, 700 is coming. If we bounce off it, we could try to push back up towards 740. So it all depends on CPI. It's hard to predict how it's looking. Charts are looking a little more bearish, but charts are not everything. Charts are not everything, guys, before CPI. CPI is going to play the big role. This could always be a trap. So we will see if this causes the market to push or not, and we will see how the numbers end up looking. So that being said, thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and we'll see what happens tomorrow with CPI. It's going to be a big day. It's going to affect the Fed's policies. So get ready and do what you have to do. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and peace out.